The Verdict with World Pool.
Hello everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict with myself and Josh Kerr. We're going to be digging deep into the race IQ data from 6 different venues this week, so we're going far and wide to hopefully find some very interesting performances for you to mull over in the coming days. And we're going to start last week on Wednesday at Kempton Park. Here are the winners from 6 o'clock through to the 9 o'clock contest. And all of the times are above the Racing Post standard. The race I want to concentrate on is Brilliant Star in the 7 o'clock over just shy of a mile and 3 furlongs. The win time to 20.64, 3.54 above the standard. We come to expect that with races over this sort of distance at Kempton Park. It's the Kempton crawl that causes that. So let's have a look at the race IQ time index to see exactly where this race sits compared to all of the other times. Remember, 0 to 10 is the scale, and the time index for Brilliant Star was 6.6 with the average of 6 overall. Quite good times on the card, bar the first and the last races. So most of them run at a good, even gallop. Wasn't necessarily the case with Brilliant Star, and that's why I wanted to highlight this particular effort, because it was quite steadily run early on and turned into a sprint. From stall 8, Brilliant Star, Eloquencia from 6, Golden Step from stall 5. Take it away, Josh, what happened early on?
Well, there on paper was very little pace, and that's exactly how it unfolded. Rab Havlin, from the widest stall of all, just uses a little bit more to get up there and get that position, but as soon as he gets to the front, it's get the handbrake on, and we're going to see through furlongs 2, very slow versus par, and then 3 and 4 slow versus par by the time he takes them into the back straight. Yeah,
he was second fastest to 20 miles an hour, 2.47 seconds, and then fastest through the first furlong to get to the lead, establish something of an advantage, and then Josh has highlighted the next 3 furlongs, over 13 seconds, he's really steadied it down, and it does turn into a little bit of a dash. We've become used to this at Kempton Park. Now, we are dealing with Brilliant Star, who's got a lovely pedigree by Cracksman out of a mare who was a 3 times Group 1 winner. And Brilliant Star was a very easy winner on debut. I think it was a 10-length win. And this is a very easy win as well. But we mustn't make the mistake, Josh, of thinking this is all about an easy lead. This is a talented horse.
Yes, and the margin of victory on this occasion goes to explain the talent rather than just it being an easy lead. Yeah, Brilliant Star, who was very taking at Yarmouth. On debut over the mile at Newcastle, was very, very green, but still shaped with some promise, and has taken another step forward here. You mentioned that break speed. That's the fastest she's broken out the stalls as well, although be it on this occasion to get that prominent position. But, it did start picking up far enough out. Fast furlongs versus par in furlongs 7, 8, 9 and 10. And we'll see shortly in the straight, there is still greenness. There is still upside and improvement to come from this horse.
Yeah, picked up 5 out then, 11.75 seconds rated as fast against the race IQ par through the 9th furlong. That was where she quickened up. She did 12.29, then 11.75, and she quickens again, 11.46, and her rivals just cannot live with her thereafter. Eloquencia back in 2nd place, Golden Step in 3rd, but they have been thrashed by her turn of foot. She quickened up really well. You talk about being green. I thought she lugged a little bit left up the home straight.
She lugged considerably left, more than a little bit, and she was starting to lug even before Rab Havlin started to ask her, and he hasn't asked her full effort by any means, but he's just starting to have a look under the bonnet, and there you go, she's looking around, the ears are flicking about in various directions, and she had been out in front on her own for a very, very long time. So perhaps entitled to do that. And as I say, the fact that there's still some upside to come here is encouraging. This is one of those races where some of the figures you can only dig so deep down, because although she's gone away, again, it's still pretty much a hands and heel ride.
Yeah, sometimes when you get an easy lead, you've then got to take advantage of that and be able to utilise speed in the closing part of the race, and she's definitely been able to do that. A finishing speed percentage, 108.57, which is above the par of 105.92. Quite a high par. That's because at Kempton they go steady in sprint. That's what happened here. But she's come home really quickly. Her fastest furlong, 11.46 at the 1.25 mile point. And you can see there that she broke really well. 2.47 seconds, second fastest, and then soon into the lead. I liked the speed that she showed in the closing stages. But I have a question, Josh. Hanging left like she did, lugging to the left, do we put it down to greenness, or is there some temperament in there?
I'm willing to say greenness. Mentally, she has been slow to come to it, but she has made progress on every start. And what I took from the data there was the fact the second came home evenly for what you would expect in a race like this, and she's gone away and put her on that huge margin. We're not dealing with a great quality of horse in behind, I don't think, but she's going through the steps that you would like to see from her, getting her education. No doubt the Ribblesdale is going to be the target, which a race her dam won. Her dam, as you said, went on to then win an Irish Oaks, a Vermeer and a Champions Fillies and Mares. A long way to go before she does that, but she's certainly moving in the right direction.
Remember, with Cracksman's, you've got an angle if things go wrong. Blinkers that helped him win a Champion Stakes at Ascot. And I'm not saying she needs them now, but they're in the locker if you need them as far as Brilliant Star is concerned. I think we'll see her at Royal Ascot.
Turning our attention then to Ballinrobe on Friday night. Personified, that was a nice time for Aidan O'Brien. But we're going to be looking later on the card. Trojan Fighter, who came home in 2 minutes 56.15. More than 5 seconds slower than the standard over that longer trip. And it was a very nice performance indeed. We'll look then at the times across the day. The ground officially good to yielding in places. And I think that's just about right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Josh. Yeah, 4.8 on the time index. The meeting average was 4.5. We had some steadily run contests, and this is one of them. But Trojan Fighter promises a load more than he was able to show on this occasion for the very much informed Paddy Toomey team. Stall 4. He beats Ballyadam. What's he doing on the flat? And Dilligo was in third spot. 4.16, the stalls where they came out of. And he jumped slowly, break speed 0 to 20 miles an hour, 3.23 seconds, 7th fastest, but soon into stride, Josh, big white face and soon prominent.
Yes, soon prominent and potentially a little bit keen here and doesn't really want to be leading here, Billy Lee, and we'll see that he then sort of lets rivals stride on past. And as a result, the sectionals in the early parts of the race, it does look a bit messy in terms of, you know, we've had a very fast second furlong, then they go a bit slower, then they quicken again, and then they're gonna finish fast, but slow again in the meantime. It is a muddling sort of race in terms of the sectionals.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's very stop-start. This is Oust who just goes forward at this point of the race to take up the running, and it just gives Billy Lee a nice sit on Trojan Fighter, who I think is a really nice horse going forward for Paddy Toomey. This was a step up in trip and it clearly suited.
Absolutely, the step up in trip has suited. It's going to be interesting to see the path that this horse may take, and we'll touch on that in a little moment. But yes, certainly the step up in trip has suited this horse, who is ultimately in the box seat given the stop-start nature of this contest. But again, when we get to the finish, the margin of victory is going to be very striking.
Yeah, you talk about the stop-start gallop. The 7th, the 8th and the 9th furlong, they went really steady. 14.78, 15.05 and 13.62 for Trojan Fighter through those furlongs before they began to pick up the pace after 10 furlongs. And then Trojan Fighter takes up the running at that stage, and Billy Lee decides just to get on with it. He decides to press on quite a long way out, and Trojan Fighter, amidst obvious greenness, perhaps much more obvious than Brilliant Star at Kempton, runs out a pretty ready winner. His finishing speed percentage, 105.19. The par here at Ballinrobe over this trip is 101.37. So has certainly finished the race off very strongly. He's got plenty of speed for a horse who promises to be suited by even further than this trip.
Yeah, and the sort of clues there, I suppose, coming in those final sectionals where Trojan Force is fast versus par, and as we get into the final furlong, the only horse able to do a fast furlong versus par, while everyone else pretty much is slow or further back, very slow. You mentioned Ballinrobe there, who's going to come home second, coming to the flat, having been seen over obstacles considerably more recently than this. Now, if you go back to this race last year, the winner for Paddy Toomey was Karma's, and placed that day was Daddy Longlegs. So there is a bit of precedent of horses coming from the jumps into this contest this time of season where they've been on the go. But look at this, streets away, and I think has had a relatively easy race there.
Yeah, I don't think he's had a hard time. He looked very green, ears pricked, looking around. Billy Lee just nudged him out, hands and heels, and his final furlong of 12.28, better than Ballinrobe of 13.04. He was way quicker than Ballinrobe, who got a moderate ride. He got a bad trip, basically. He was forced 4 wide on the bend, Ballinrobe, so he probably would have been a bit closer than that 7-length margin if he'd been able to get an inside trip, but he couldn't, and he wouldn't have beaten Trojan Fighter anyway. There's the data. His fastest furlong was 12.28. A mile and 5 furlongs was when he did that. 105.19, the finishing speed percentage from a horse who is chock full of potential, and he might go the Karma's route because a race at the end of this week beckons, listed contest.
Yeah, the Yates Stakes, which Karma's also took in and won. If Trojan Fighter was to go and do that here, no doubt the Queen's Vase would be the logical next step, which Karma's went on to win at the Royal Meeting last year.
Pretty sure he had an easy race there, Paddy Toomey. I think likely to turn him out at the end of the week in that listed Yates Stakes, and then on to Royal Ascot as well. Let's move on to Naas on Saturday. Here are the winners and the times from an excellent card. And we're going to concentrate on a really nice 2-year-old. It is Confucius, who won the 2:35. 6 furlongs was the trip. And the winning time was 1:09.91, not too far off the Racing Post standard of 1:09.2. And overall, he's produced a very good time, this 2-year-old. He probably should have won on debut. He was a bit unlucky, but here he's made amends and was very well backed to do so. He was in the 3rd contest there, 6 furlongs, 9.7. The best time on the card by some way. The meeting average 7.5, and I think that's in accordance with the going description of good, but possibly a little bit quicker than that. Josh, you with me on that?
I would certainly be looking at the quicker side of good, certainly potentially a bit of good to firm in places. But while some of those time indexes are high, it's Confucius who comes to the top of the pile.
Certainly does. Let's have a look at the race. And he comes from stall 2. He beats Alaskan Bear from 6. He beats Bull Shark from stall 5. He thrashes them. He wins by 3 3/4 lengths. And to be honest, this race was never in doubt. It was dead straightforward. Break speed straight out into the lead. Fastest to 20 miles an hour, 2.59 seconds. And he dominates this race on the rail. And he goes pretty evenly throughout the whole contest.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's that even tempo that others aren't really able to cope with. Bull Shark will come down that outside and try and take on. But here we are, we've got a 10.92 par sectional. In fact, there are 3 consecutive sub-11 second furlongs for Confucius. In fact, the first 3 did that through the middle of the race. And during that, it's then only Confucius who will be able to see it out come the line.
Well, that's it. He's run very fast. 10.94, 10.92, 10.91, 11.22, and then when it comes to this final furlong, he runs about a bit, just almost bangs into the rail a bit. He's still a bit green, he doesn't quite know what to do under pressure, but now he picks up, and his final furlong of 12.29 is faster than the Race IQ par, and others behind him floundering with slower than par figures. 2nd and 3rd were both slower than par. He rolled around a bit, he didn't know what to do, as we can see from this, but then he picked up again and ran on really strongly. This is a very talented 2-year-old.
A very talented 2-year-old indeed, and in terms of the where next, there are a few different options to consider, but nonetheless has come through this test very well indeed, and certainly there will be some big targets, you would imagine.
Yeah, we've been talking about Royal Ascot a lot, haven't we? Brilliant Star, we mentioned the Ribblesdale. He's probably going to be Royal Ascot bound, this fella. And you'd think maybe the Coventry Stakes. I think he's fine at 6, obviously, and that's a stiff finish at Naas. So he'll be okay at Ascot, I think, over 6. There are his pars. Look at his par sectionals. They're all par. Look at all the sea of blue. Everything else in the race are running slower than par sectionals, but he's just grinding it out. 10.94, 10.92, 10.91, 11.22, and then he hits the line hard at 12. 29. Just how good do you think he is, Josh? Is he potentially a Coventry winner, or is he potentially a horse who could run really well in that?
Certainly, you wouldn't have any problems with a stiffly run 6 furlongs, would you? I know Albert Einstein, who won this last year, they chose to go a different route and went for the Marble Hill. That would be an option here. I wouldn't be totally against trying to see Confucius eke out the 7 furlongs. I know it's very much a sprinting pedigree, but you've seen a No Nay Never in True Love stay on and get further perhaps than the pedigree might have suggest, and I like the way he's gone through the line there. So potentially a Chesham, but I know you're going to be all over the Coventry.
I'm all over the Coventry. 1,700,000 he cost as a yearling. Confucius say, very good horse.
It was a busy day's racing on Saturday, lots to take in, including at Nottingham, and there's one horse in particular to draw attention to, and it might not be the obvious option here. Lightning Thunder, and the time, you can see, more than a second per furlong slower than the Racing Post standard. Taking a look at the time indexes, and it'll be reflective there of, again, a slow time versus par and a slow time versus the meeting average, which was 6, and that mile contest, race number 2 on the card, down at 2.9. We'll take a look at the race then, and Angus, we'll see in a second just why those times are as bad as they are, and yet why we're bothering to look at this race. They break out Lightning Thunder from 1, Romanticising from 3, and Carib from 6. So why on earth are we looking at this race, Captain?
Well, the final times are a good way to start analysis of races, but what you need to look at is how those times were achieved, and that's what I wanted to do here, because this final time is poor when compared to the rest of the times on the card, but what this horse did in the closing stages is very impressive, and the portents are for much better to come somewhere down the line, particularly in a more strongly run race. The first and second are keen because they go so steady early on. You can see the winner just behind the horse in yellow, pulling hard, and you can see the second, Romanticising, big white face, keen as well. That's because the first 4 furlongs, every single horse in the race was slower than par. Indeed, the first 3 were rated as very slow. And I'll give you the leaders' sectionals just to back that up. Second furlong, 14.05, 14.24 and a 13.95. It was an absolute crawl that led to that 2.9 time index, with the average being 6. But what you have to have then, when a race is run at a crawl, is you have to flash lots of speed in the latter part of the contest, and that's what Lightning Thunder does.
Absolutely, that finishing speed percentage up 115, par is 102, so that gives you further illustration after those National Hunt level of fractions that you were describing.
Yes.
And then that furlong 6, 11.05, very fast versus par. In fact, the final 3 furlongs are all going to be very fast versus par. And if you look as well from Midsummer Storm, who was racing in the same part of the race early on as Lightning Thunder, just could not pick up.
Couldn't pick up and live with the speed that Lightning Thunder shows. 11.05, 11.12, 11.5, and quickens in good style. Look how far the front 2 have got in going clear of the 3rd and the 4th. That's quite impressive, the way they've pulled clear with the speed that they've shown. There's a head between them and 4 1/4 lengths back to the 3rd. I like what the second horse did, though, in the closing stages. It looked like Lightning Thunder was going to go away and win by a clear margin, Josh, but Romanticising rallied late on in the final furlong, was only a 1/10 of a second slower than the winner through the final furlong. And you can see there, 11.05, the fastest furlong for the winner. Romanticising 11.12. Just a shade quicker, about 3-2 Lightning Thunder. That won the race, but Romanticising was getting back at the line, and I'm going to suggest Romanticising will win next time. It's a Racing TV tracker horse for me. It was Swinton Hurdle Day on Saturday at Haydock Park, and there was some very good National Hunt racing. We're going to concentrate on the 4 flat races in terms of the times. We had Sal Kadan winning the 2:30, Muharraj, the 3:05. Lake Forest, we'll concentrate on him in a moment, the 3:40. And Atarangi in the 4:15. Lake Forest's time was pretty good, 1:27.58, the standard being 1:24.8. And let's have a look at the time index and just see where that sits. 5.5 was the index that he achieved, the meeting average of 4.7 on the day. The ground described as good. Do we agree with that?
I think I do. I think maybe a touch of good to soft in there, which is understandable given it was a split card with the jumps as well.
Yeah, indeed. OK, let's have a look at Lake Forest then. And the first thing to note is that he's dropping in grade to listed company here. Stall 4, he beats Mile, very consistent, very tough from 2. Balmacara, late headway into 3rd from stall number 8. That's what Balmacara does. Lake Forest slowly into stride, 5th fastest, 2.47 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour. But I don't think that's a problem, really. Lake Forest is often ridden to get cover and to come home with a rare old rattle. And the thing to note about this race is that it was strongly run. Look at the second furlong, Lake Forest, racing in 7th place, went sub-11, went 10.87 seconds. All of these horses were doing their running early in the piece. It was a very strong gallop, certainly for the first 3 or 4 furlongs.
Indeed, but it's Lake Forest, the only horse who was doing those sort of sub-11 second furlongs in that part of the race that was able to sustain it later on. Ultimately, we are dealing with a higher quality horse than listed company. They found a good option here to drop down into listed without a penalty as well. But nonetheless, coming from the right part of the race, but of just very striking in terms of the distance put on the field on this occasion. And again, when everyone else is wilting properly, the whole field is doing very slow. Sectionals, you can see that 11.99 penultimate furlong there, but that is nearly 0.4 of a second quicker than the next best. So just is finding more over this very strong 7 furlong contest. And I think that Lake Forest, for all the routes that they could end up taking there, this as a starting point was very nice and will be gearing a season round, going back to the City of York, having not had a clear run in the race last year and being unlucky not to win on that occasion.
Yeah, I'll probably go back there. This is just a race where they've gone fast to halfway, then they've all wilted and slowed down. It does look like Lake Forest is slowing down, but this is really one for the sectionals. 11.44 fifth furlong, then slowed down, 11.99, then 12.92. So through the final 3 furlongs, Lake Forest was getting slower and slower, but the others were slowing down even more in behind. Look at this colour coding for you then. Early on, you can see those red colours, fast furlongs, that 10.87 that Lake Forest had to run early on to hold a relatively handy position. And then they're slowing down through the closing stages of the race. And that's why you had a finishing speed percentage that was below 199.5. There was not a race where a horse was going to cruise through and quicken. It's a race where they were all using up their energy in the early part of it. And indeed, every single horse in the race ran their fastest furlong in the 2nd furlong. I like what Mile did. I'll just give him a little bit of a sectional upgrade because he was always prominent and he clung on in there for 2nd place. He'll win a listed race. Lake Forest will go up in grade now.
Rolling on to Sunday and ending a week of Derby trials at Leopardstown. And let's have a look at the times from that day then. And some nice ones in there, including Catalina del Carpio, a very nice time, continuing a fantastic week for Paddy Toomey. But it's the 3:40 we're going to be concentrating on. James J Braddock, a heavyweight performance, you might think maybe, in the Derby trial, coming home in 2:08.20, 2.6 slower than the standard. Looking at the time indexes from Leopardstown yesterday, where the ground was officially good, and I think, Angus, that meeting average of 5.2, good as a description, is bang on. I
think it's good. Yeah, I've got no problems with that whatsoever. Time index of 4.9 for James J Braddock in the 5th race over 10 furlongs. The overall time, 2 minutes 8.2 over 10 furlongs. Remember, a world-class horse over 10 furlongs, 2 minutes is the standard. He's 8 seconds above that. That's because of the run of the race. Let's have a look at it and describe that run of the race for you. He came from stall 3. He beat Pierre Bonnard from 1, an endorsement from 5, who I think was the pacemaker, really. It just took a few strides to get to the front endorsement. James J Braddock broke slowly, 2.87 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour. Back in 4th spot, it was straight up. We missed the break a little bit out the back. And you can just see edging forward now, endorsement. Once he gets to the front through 2 par furlongs, as against the Race IQ par, Ronan Whelan then steadies it down, and he keeps having a look to see where Pierre Bonnard is, and Pierre's right behind him.
He is, and they're not going particularly strongly in this early part of the race. The finishing speed percentage 106, par that 101.5. And yeah, they're not going particularly strongly. That is going to be a disadvantage to Pierre Bonnard, an advantage to endorsement. Also, you could argue a disadvantage to James J Braddock, who we'll see in a minute, is sat further back off the pace. But So it has turned into a sprinting nature. Nonetheless, the way this race is going to pan out, you can't be anything other than disappointed at Pierre Bernard, can you?
No, I'm disappointed with him, to be honest. I think he wants a strong test at 10. I mean, he was a Zetland winner at 2 at Newmarket on the Rowley Mile over 10 furlongs. I think he wants a mile and a half now, to be honest. So the pace was really steady because Endorsement got to the front and slowed it right up after 2 furlongs. And this is the point where it begins to just crank up a little bit and they begin to increase. 13:02 they've just gone, and now they'll go from the blue zone to the red zone. They go 12:41, 12:21. So they're just starting to pick the pace up there. Endorsement of Ronan Whelan. He's just letting out a little bit of rain and he's saying, right, let's go. And it turns into a bit of a dash, and Pierre Bernard just doesn't have the speed to go away and win this comprehensively. The market suggested he would. He was odds on, he was well supported, but he doesn't have the speed. I think he's all about stamina. This race was about speed, and it is James J Braddock who deserves a bit of a sectional upgrade because he's a bit too far back when the sprint begins, yet he gets there late on. 11:84, a fast 9th furlong, and he comes home with a very fast final furlong of 12:18.
Yeah, the whole field is going very fast at this stage. Pierre Bernard has just lugged in slightly as he tries to get past Endorment, and this is a complete reverse of the form in the Ballysax Stakes. But if I was to take one of these horses out heading towards the Derby, it would be the winner, and the reason for that is looking at the stride really of Pierre Bernard. Those that know a lot more about it talk about you want to have low revs early doors in a Derby, and that's what Pierre Bernard doesn't have, and that wouldn't help him over that test, whereas James J Braddock is more in the mould of the sort of horse that might be suited by ups and downs.
Might be completely wrong about this. I think Pierre Bernard might end up being a ledger horse. Anyway, James J Braddock's data is there for you to see. He was 4th fastest at 20 miles an hour. 38.34 miles an hour was the high speed that he hit. You see, Pierre Bernard did run just a little bit faster through the same furlong, 38.56. And Pierre Bernard ran a faster furlong than James Braddock. He couldn't sustain his speed quite as well as James J Braddock. And Pierre Bernard goes down as a disappointment. And this is not the best Derby trial that we saw last week by any stretch of the imagination.
No, certainly Constitution River at Chester would probably be the pick of them. I thought Maltese Cross ran with plenty of credit. It does feel at this stage that the Derby picture is quite open, and the Dante, which we'll be going through with a fine-tooth comb on the next edition of the verdict, could well be the biggest clue we'll see.
Might well be, yeah. This is a verdict plea for Aidan O'Brien. Please run Constitution River in the Derby. He's got to run in the Derby, surely. Don't you agree?
Again, talking about that stride and that low revs, I think he'd be suited by it. It's just, yeah, what plans and what other horses might be in the way?
Doesn't matter what else is there. I think he'll win if he runs, but he might go to France instead. Good stuff. That was an interesting contest, if a falsely run race at Leopardstown on Sunday. The Whirlpool race of the week took place at Tokyo on Sunday. It was the NHK Mile Cup, a Group 1 over a mile on the turf. Rodeo Drive was the winner from Ask Ikigomi in second. They had a good tussle, just a nose between them.
Yes, and very well named Rodeo Drive out of a mare called Beverly Hills. Sent off favourite, but still has so much to do. The 17 number cloth near side, plenty of horses to pass. The race sectional suggests it was a bit stronger than even, just under 100 the finishing speed percentage of the race. And so you can give this horse a sectional upgrade coming back from much further in the field.
Yeah, flew just over 64 kilometres an hour in the closing stages there for Rodeo Drive, winning the NHK Mile Cup. That is it for this week's edition of The Verdict. Josh and I will be back next week, casting our eyes over what happens at York this week. May I direct you to the website? Andy Stevens has got 10 Race IQ eye catchers for you there. Do go and have a look at those. For now, we say goodbye and we'll see you next week.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.